Hey everyone, Mr. Wineland here as I'm going over 11.3. Sorry, I'm posting this a little bit later. I meant to post it earlier, but kind of forgot. That's okay. Posting it now, so it's good news. Good news. But we're going to go into the war, the home front during World War One. Obviously, the war is over there, over there. I mean, there's those songs over about talking about war being over there. But winning the war was not just about going to Europe and fighting. It was also about kind of dealing with the conflict at home, and that's dealing with the economy. Also dealing with producing goods that were going to go over to war. Also, how are people going to share these goods? Because things had to be rationed in order for soldiers to get what they need for victory. So, in process, we see that the government is going to use its power. Congress, President Wilson, are going to have to regulate, fix some things in order for industries to kind of get ready for war. And so we started to see this, and number 12 is right there, already happening, creating kind of a board that's going to go, okay, we're going to produce this much of beans or this much of such and such product, wheat, gasoline, whatever, for the war. And so whatever we need for the war is setting aside here. Everybody else is here. And so then they had to ration what's here. So to make sure everybody got what they needed. So they had to eliminate waste by that way, by standardized products, only making like 5 colors of typewriter ribbons instead of 150. So Bernard M. Branch basically proposed prosperous businessman. Sorry, not proposed. What am I talking about? Prosperous businessman, head of the board, also wanted quotas and certain raw materials set aside to help in this war effort. And so he is very successful in this, increased production by 20%. We see the Railroad Administration control the railroads. We see fuel and monitored coal, supplies, ration gasoline, so heating and oil, so things like that, dealing with trying to do what's best for the people, but getting the soldiers what they need. By March of 1918, the Fuel Administration introduced another conservation measure, daylight savings time. This was also proposed back by Benjamin Franklin in the 1770s. Obviously, as a way to not just for people to wake up early and go, oh, we have the sun, whatever, and have the days longer, but just the sun longer. But it just helped with longer work days to help in this time frame. Also, you see hourly wages for blue collar workers are increased with shipbuilding and metal packing and other food factories as well. But this also raises the cost of the not just the household income, but the costs of the products that are produced. And we see, by contrast, stockholders in large, are making enormous profits due to this. And we see that they saw stock multiply in value 1,600% between 1914 and 1918. By the time the company was earning 68 million yearly profit as a result of uneven pay between labor management. So it's working. They're having success. We do see union membership climb during this time to ensure that their safety was protected. There is some issues, though, over the direction of how to lay that out, how to make sure that these are being executed. We do see strikes. About 6,000 strikes broke out during war months to deal with disputes. President Wilson established the National War Labor Board in 1918, which did help with certain draft exemptions, as well as the work or fight idea, though, was put on the plate of these workers. So it was basically, yeah, we're going to ensure that you're safe. Yeah, we're going to help you get these things, but that's it. Like, we're the final word, and if you do not work, you're going to go fight. So eventually, union members had to eventually kind of get what they could, and they go fight. However, we do see that they improve factory conditions, pushing 8-hour work days, promoting safety inspection. So things do come out of it. Some good things come out of it. To help with produce and conserve food, we see that Food Administration is established by Herbert Hoover. Instead of just rationing food, he called on people to follow the gospel of clean plates. Basically, eat what you got. Basically, you got this, eat it. If your kid says, I don't like vegetables, you say, I don't care. There's somebody who's dying who could use those vegetables, and I'm not going to waste this food, so you better eat it. clean your plate. Um, he declared 1 day a week meatless, another sweetless, 2 days wheatless, and 2 days of porkless, basically trying to get people to not eat meat a certain day so they can save as much as they could for the war effort. And he also, too, the good thing about Herbert Hoover, and people don't understand about this with the Food Administration, is that he also set the sizes of your milk. It used to come in a variety of different bottles and shapes. And he basically said, let's keep it simple for the milkman and for the people, and also to conserve and not waste milk. But he did the gallon, the half gallon, and the quarts. So not too bad, not too shabby there by Herbert Hoover. But we do see homeowners are asked to plant victory gardens as a way to supplement food like tomatoes, cucumbers. As a result, these similar efforts, American food shipments and allies tripled. We see Hoover set up high government price on wheat and other staples. We see farmers responded by putting additional 40 million acres into production. So they were able to have some success with this, increasing their incomes. But we do see the United States has spent about 35.5 billion on the war effort. This is a costly thing. It costs money to win. It really does. It costs money to win. But also the income tax is implemented to deal with the high taxes and low rather than low incomes. We see war profit taxes. Sorry, tax the high incomes, my bad, on higher rates than low incomes. But we see war profit tax. We also see excise tax, tobacco, liquor, luxury goods. Those things are getting taxed high as well. Liberty loans, victory loans, bonds are being sold to help supplement whatever they couldn't get from taxes as well. Answer number 11 is right here. Also, we see the information is being popularized. We understand that war efforts, what's going on over there, what's going on in Europe, and people wanting to know. So the government's like, well, we're not going to tell them like everything. We're not going to be super truthful. So they're just going to tell them like what they want to hear, and that things are good, things are great. So the CPI, better known as the Committee on Public Information, basically shot out propaganda, basically biased communication designed to influence people's thoughts and actions, basically to get people to think, ooh, we're doing a great job over there in Europe. And in some cases we were, but in a lot of cases we weren't. And they didn't share a lot of that information. So headed by CPI was former muckraking journalist named George Creel. He's number 11. Persuaded the nation's artists, advertising agents to create thousands of paintings, posters, cartoons, sculptures promoting the war. Creel recruited more than 75,000 men to serve as 4-minute men who spoke about everything relating to the war, the draft, rationing bond drives, victory gardens, topics such as why we were fighting and the meaning of America. Creel's propaganda campaign was highly effective. While the campaign promoted patriotism, it also inflamed hatred, violations of civil liberties, and of certain ethnic groups and opponents of the war. So propaganda was effective. It worked. It got people to reach down in their emotions, but it was not always accurate, and that is a problem. We also see early in 1917, President Wilson expressed his fears about consequences of war hysteria, which I say the dangers of propaganda sometimes is that liberties can sometimes the attack on civil liberties can increase. Once lead this people into war, and they'll forget there ever was such a thing as tolerance. To fight, you must be brutal and ruthless, and the spirit of ruthless brutality will enter into the very fiber of our national life, infecting Congress, the courts, the policemen on the beat, the man in the street. Conformity will be the only virtue, and every man who refused to conform would have to pay the penalty. So basically, this prediction came true. We see a lot of war hysteria. As war declared, we see that a lot of civil liberties were tested during this time, unofficial and official, because people are scared. And when someone is trying to speak up and do the right thing, sometimes they're not being heard, or sometimes they're being pushed down. So the main targets of these attacks were, a lot of them were immigrants, especially those from Germany and Austria-Hungary. They came over to the country. About 2 million Americans had been born from Germany or from other parts around, or German, ties. A lot of American German descent suffered during this time from discrimination and people being just cruel to them. Many Americans with German names lost their jobs. Like for example, I'm have an Austrian last name. It's German as well in some ways. Wineland. So over there it's Weinland. So if I was back in 1918, 1917 era, I'd probably be persecuted for who I was. We see orchestras refuse to play Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, which is kind of ridiculous. It's like they weren't even a part of this war, but that's how crazy it was. Some towns that were founded by Germans had a German name, changed it, and changed certain aspects of their culture. We see that even like it got so bad that even the burst of anti-German favor led to them renaming the measles, the German measles, to the Liberty measles, which is crazy. It's like, okay, I don't think that makes it that much better. Hamburger, German name, uh, from the German city of Hamburg, became the Salisbury steak, and then Liberty sandwich. And then also, I remember too during, I think it was when we attacked Iraq. Basically, we got criticized by France, and a lot of people got mad, and so they decided we're not going to call them French fries. We're going to call them Liberty fries. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. Because one, French fries aren't French; they're from Belgium, and two, it's just a name. Like Liberty fries, and they're pulling up something that's already happened before. June 1917, Congress also passed the Espionage Act, and May of 1918 passed the Sedition Act. Person can be fined up to $10,000, imprisoned for interfering with war effort, speaking against government, and sentenced up to 20 years. Like the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798, these laws clearly violated the spirit of the First Amendment, but led to over 2,000 prosecutions for loosely defined anti-war activities. Of these, over half resulted convictions. These were actually even challenged in the Supreme Court, and they stood for a while because, and there's in some ways still stand during wartime. You know, um, they kind of viewed it as, yeah, during a time of war, time of chaos, it makes sense that, yeah, you can't speak up against the government. But this becomes a problem because newspapers are being criticized that if they try to criticize anything about the Allies, they would lose their mailing privileges. House representatives refused to even seat Victor Berger, who was a socialist congressman. And so this became a big problem, even for labor leaders. Your answer number 9 is right here, W.E.B. Du Bois. The black opinion over the war effort was divided. I mean, on one hand, you have W.E.B. Du Bois going, yeah, blacks should join the war effort. This is only going to help our cause, strengthen our ability to fight for racial justice. Others, like William Monroe Trotter, founded the Boston Guardian, believe that no, why are we supporting this war from a racist government? Which, in some ways, yes, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of systemic problems, but this is also an opportunity to get some credibility, some opportunity to really show some loyalty to this country. And I think that's where Du Bois was saying is we need to show some loyalty, and that we're not divided on this issue, because that way it will help our ability to get a voice further down the line. Nevertheless, we do see that despite the grievances over continued racial inequality, we see African Americans eventually back the war. Number 13 is everything in blue right here. We also see a lot of African Americans are taking this time to move out of the South. I mean, there's jobs opening up because of the war effort, and now some of them are leaving the South and heading up to the cities up north, because you have certain factories, like what was going on with the Ford factory, where there was a lot of jobs opening up, and primarily part of it was leaving the Jim Crow South, getting away from racism, but a lot of it was also dealing with the boll weevil infestation, aided by floods, droughts that ruined the cotton fields in the South. That was part of the reason. But then the main reason was Henry Ford opening up his factory in Detroit, and that advertising people to go up and try to find a job. And some were not going to go to Detroit. Some were actually going to go to Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York City. Some people's ultimate destination may have been Detroit, or may have been somewhere in New York City or Philadelphia, but on their way up, they decide, hey, Baltimore's a really nice city. They got jobs here. Let's stay in Baltimore. Oh, Cincinnati looks like a nice place. I'm just going to stay in Cincinnati. So we do see African Americans eventually trickling out into other places in the North. We see women moved up into jobs. We see that were held exclusively by men because um, they became railroad workers, cooks, dock workers, bricklayers. These jobs obviously weren't available to the men because they're off fighting in war. So we're seeing that they're taking on more different jobs than just traditional jobs, even though they are still doing those jobs, nurses, clerks, teachers. They're doing these other jobs as well. A lot of women also volunteered with the Red Cross facilities, encouraging the sale of bonds, also planting victory gardens. We're also seeing them really with the peace movement. Adams, who we talked about in previous chapters, helped found the Women's Peace Party in 1915. But basically, women are stepping up during this time of war because remember, before that, women were just angry, like we want the women's right to vote. Scott, it was really bad in England. There was fighting, they were seeing the martial arts being used against police by women just to protect themselves from the police from getting hurt. So this became an issue, and it was really hostile for fighting for the women's right to vote. But the war effort helped because women kind of took it down a notch, took down the temperature a little bit, and showed their loyalty to the country. And the country goes, "Oh, we see you now, and we're gonna recognize your right to vote for the white women." That's a different story, which we've already kind of addressed in previous chapters. But either way, it did open the door and it gave women the right to vote. Number 10 is the flu epidemic. We do see by fall of 1918, the United States is not just dealing with the war crisis, but it's also dealing with disease, and an epidemic is happening. We see that the effect of the epidemic on the economy was devastating as people are getting the flu. And in certain cities, mines were shut down, telephone services were cut in half, factories of the offices staggered working hours. And the corpse of poor people lay unburied for as long as a week. You kind of saw some of this happening with the pandemic. Things were so bad in New York that they didn't have a morgue for people. They had to put them in ditches for a while, or have freezing trucks. It got so bad, and so these are things that are just they're not they're just they're hard. They're hard to see, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so glad that we have the vaccine. But maybe more and more people get vaccinated as it becomes available. That we can put all this stuff behind us, and hopefully we never have to deal with this in our lifetime. I hope that not in my children's or my grandchildren's lifetime they have to deal with something like this. But it was pretty bad. Either way, this mysterious illness definitely affected people for weeks, months, years. It became bad. Basically, doctors did not know what to do other than recommend cleanliness and quarantine in the army. Things got so bad with illness, it spread rapidly through certain units. Germans also fell victim to this, possibly spread around the world. The soldiers epidemic killed about 500,000 Americans before it disappeared in 1919. Historians do believe the influenza virus killed as many as 30 million people worldwide. World War One brought death and disease to millions, but the flu epidemic, the war also came to an end. So we see that basically with the flu, it got so bad during the time of war that it was primarily one of the reasons why they decided to have an armistice and end this war. So, but that does it for the end of World War One. So we're done with section 3. We'll have section 4 that I'm going to post here, and we'll be done with this chapter. All right, guys, be ready for section 4 video. See ya.